Welcome back to the Bouk and Zoobie show on the world famous LIR.com, 92.7 LIR.com, and YouTube. I am John Kalaboukas, the Bouk, with my friend Paul Zubulake, Zubie. So while you were relaxing in North Carolina with all of our friends, I was here stuck in New York watching two terrible losses for the New York Jets. Ugh, disgusting losses.
Well, I'll tell you, I think all our fans are happy. We're happy that we weren't on last week because it would have been a full-length rant as the Jets franchise, again, John, is showing just a lack of, I think it's just going to be leadership and rational leadership. And there is no rationality because it's never a plan. And we got off the air a couple weeks ago talking about Aaron Rodgers, where I had to slightly eat crow about my comments that Aaron Rodgers was a 40-year-old quarterback. And that's what he was. He wasn't the MVP. And that's what the Jets have. And then what happens, John, right? He goes out there for a week, looks like he's the MVP, and the fan base blindly follows down that road. And the last 2 weeks, and it's not obviously just on him, and we'll get to it, but this team, as I said, John, in the beginning, after 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, I should say, a borderline playoff team with a 40-year-old quarterback going on 41, who's lucky if he can play 17 games.
Yep. And one other thing that is clear to me, I mean,
there's many other things.
Yeah, I mean, how clear? We've both been calling for Saleh to be fired, and he's just completely useless. Completely useless. Smiling at the most inappropriate times with his players. What are you smiling about? He was smiling at the end of the game, and I'm saying to myself, why are you smiling? You're losing right now. You should be pissed off. They've shown such a lack of discipline. They're one of the most undisciplined team I've seen. And how many times are you going to see guys missing? Have they not learned the plays? Where Rodgers is throwing to a certain spot and then not even within 15 yards of these. And you see Rodgers, he's saying, are these guys going to ever learn these routes? I mean, some really, really, just so undisciplined. And then you had, we're going to keep flip-flopping to all these games, but how many times did they have false starts against the Broncos?
Yeah.
And then Saleh says, oh, well, he has, Rodgers has all these cadences and blah, blah, blah. And Rodgers is saying, how about holding them accountable for what they, I mean, it's a mess. It's a mess. When are we getting rid of Saleh? When are we getting rid of all these people? It's terrible to watch.
It is, yeah. The Denver situation was one of the worst games in the history of the league. And they actually could have pulled it out incredibly.
Right.
But the constant thought in their heads that they're better than what they are and they can make 50-yard field goals in the rain while the other team just missed a 50-yard field goal in the rain and not get more yardage. And that's the Denver game. That's where all the false starts took place. Incredibly, John, they did not have a full start against the Vikings on the morning game. But unfortunately, were called for numerous pass interference on an illegal contact. Most of them were very shaky calls. So the Jets definitely had the whistle was completely against them, especially early. Now, in the end, it did reverse, and the officials did realize that they kind of stuck it to the Jets and did make a few calls down the stretch that actually benefited the Jets. And incredibly, Minnesota ended up having more penalties and yardage of penalties more than the Jets. So the Jets can't use that excuse for Sunday's game. And the bottom line is they fell behind 17-0 in that game, and they dug a hole that they couldn't get out of. And coaching is the number one subject. There's no question. So at 10-0, the analytics mean nothing. And if you want to go down this road of just trusting the analytics, when analytics is based on percentage, and just because the analytics say, oh, this is 61% successful, that means that there's 39% unsuccessful.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
just can't blindly go with a majority and make the decision. You have to know your overall situation in the game. I don't know how these analytics can say that the Jets should have excused the field goal,
Right.
and instead of making
Right.
it a one-score game, getting on the board when they were actually getting, they were dominated in the first half. They played better in the second half, and obviously the defense being number one there. But they put themselves in a situation late in the game that if they took the sure three at that point, they would have been able to tie it with a field goal, which takes that last drive in a completely different situation on how Minnesota is going to defend and what they're going to be able to do. So there's so many levels, John, where there's a problem. And one of the things that you just mentioned was what Rodgers does as a quarterback is that he throws players open. And what does that mean? That means he's going to put it in a position where he expects his receiver to always be looking back at the ball. And if you're running your route and your head's the other way down the field, you're not going to be able to catch his passes. And that's what happened on the interception at the end of the game because Mike Williams is still looking for that pass.
Yeah.
So is that lack of practice? Was that desperation? And because they couldn't kick a field goal, they ended up making a desperate play. So just an overall horrible 2 weeks. But John, you know what the reality is to the NFL? And we've talked about this. Parity, parity, parity. The Jets,
They still
of
have a
course,
chance.
on Monday night this week, of course, they're great on national TV, John. That's a great situation for them to be in. They have a chance with a victory at home against Buffalo, and guess what, John? They would be leading the AFC East.
It's amazing. Uh, if you look at all the records in the NFL, it's amazing. I mean, the Jets have played so lousy, and yet if the playoffs were to start now, they would be in actually with some of these teams. I mean,
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a pile. There's a
there's a
pile of
pile
three
at
and
two
two
and
and two and
three,
three.
right?
Yeah, there's a
Even
pile. So,
Miami's two and
right,
three.
of course. So there's obviously more time, but this is a team that was thinking about going deep in the playoffs, and they have to get their act together.
They
I
should have
think
been
the
four
coach
and
is
one, Paul.
incapable of doing it because it's apparent. And I actually credit one of our guests we had recently, Father K, who made the comment, John, is that when the one of the players is basically the head coach, that's a huge problem for a team. So I give him credit for like stating that for us because we probably weren't. We knew it was going on, but how much more evidence do you need? And when Rodgers got this injury, he's claiming it's an ankle sprain when he was grabbing the back or his upper, lower hamstring, upper
Yeah.
calf, and he's saying it's his ankle. I'm a little skeptical of that. But the fact is, when that ridiculous kind of roughing the punter penalty, in my opinion, now they're saying that was a good call. Okay, it's a good call. We'll take it when he just ran on the field, John, grabbed his helmet. Did he stop by the coaching staff to see like if they were okay with him going in? Because I'm sitting there going, Tyrod Taylor at 100% is better than Aaron Rodgers at like 60%, and that's what was going on. And incredibly, Rodgers led him to a touchdown. So I was like, well, I was definitely wrong about that. But in the end, they didn't put where they were unable to get the second touchdown, and they went down in defeat. And that's what happened. And this is Saleh absolutely has no control about what's going on with Aaron Rodgers at all. It's painfully obvious.
And they really should have been 4-1. Really, the, the Denver game was, like you said, winnable, very winnable. The Viking game.
It doesn't
Listen,
matter.
as much as people want to say, "Oh, Lazard is catching all these passes from Rodgers," how many how many have you seen that are right in his hands and he's still dropping them? How many times have you seen him do this? And and I'm going to give Rodgers some credit. He's thrown some passes that a lot of people really can't make, where he's hitting the guys in the chest. I I mean, they're really accurate passes, and these guys are blowing it every single time.
Well,
Between
right.
between Lazard and
Yeah,
then another guy that really got me crazy in the Viking game. It was as if he wasn't even there, was Simpson. I mean, this guy is awful. He's awful. How many times, every time you're seeing Rodgers getting pressured or sacked, it's Simpson is letting these guys go right by him. And let me say one other thing that has been driving me crazy. And again, people can criticize me if I say, but all these guys that they say, oh, he's a strong guy, they got these guys that are just out of shape, with the big bellies and they're big guys. But you know what? When they're on the field for a long time, you see them huffing and puffing and they can't move at the end of the game. We need guys that are in shape. We got too many overweight guys. And I would say across the NFL, there's too many guys with these big bellies, and everyone's saying how strong they are. Yeah, maybe for a half a game, but if their defense is on the field most of the game, at the end of the game, they're dead. They can't even do their jobs. You can see their legs are like jelly. This guy Simpson absolutely drove me crazy in that game.
Well, he definitely has not had a good 2 weeks. He had a few of
Oh,
those false starts that we talked about. The lack of their top players, looking at their press clippings, right? So going back to the Denver game quickly on this, I literally thought that Brees Hall, I mean, that was definitely the worst game he's ever had. But it was strange where he was just going down so easy in that game. It literally looked like they just went out the night before and they had nothing left for the game. I couldn't believe the way he was running in that game, and the stats prove it out. Now, he showed a little life against the Vikings, a little, but their inability to run the ball is really hurting them. Their inability to protect Rodgers, because now with these injuries, John, he's back to his lack of escapability,
yeah.
and it's going to be a huge problem. But they still have time, and they obviously going to have many opportunities to turn it around, and that will keep the faith at Florham Park. And we have to also mention Sauce Gardner. Now, what was he doing in the Viking game? John, that play on that interception, which, by the way, can the networks get their production in and I see this with baseball too, John. How many times okay, I'm going to mention baseball quickly, where the balls hit, and as a fan watching on TV, you don't see where the ball is. I've seen that a few times. It's like, what happened? And in the Jet game, you had this crucial drop in the end zone on an interception with Sauce Gardner that looked like a grandmother could have caught. He drops it, and they never showed the replay. Did you notice that in that game?
Yeah,
They never
yeah.
showed it. I mean, Sauce Gardner,
Why is he
Quinnen
being
Williams,
protected?
right?
Why is he
Go ahead.
being protected?
Right. That's what I'm saying. Quinnen Williams is the same way. Now, Quinnen finally woke up in the second half of the Minnesota game. He slept walk through the Denver game. The first half against Minnesota, he was sleepwalking. And then he
Yeah,
finally started making an impact. I'm like, yeah, look, So, all pro this, forget it. Sauce Gardner, Quinn Williams, all pro. That's the creme. That's not Pro Bowl. That's all pro. That's the creme of the league. You guys are lucky if you make the Pro Bowl. And if you
Uh,
make it at this point, obviously tons of time to go. It's reputational based. Both those guys have to step up. I mean, this is a colossal embarrassment. Brandon Eccles makes this another interception. John, he
yes,
pulled him out of the game after that. I
I
don't know if
know.
people realize that Sauce Gardner came back in the game.
I know. I
So
know.
Gardner was out. He's out. He has his helmet in the sidelines. Eccles makes this really good play, and then the next defensive series, Sauce is back in the game. Why? I don't understand it. Leave him on the bench.
Yeah.
Teach him a lesson. They bring
And
him
look
back.
at
He does nothing, and Eccles is out of the game. The guy's got 2 great picks this year.
and your man McDonald has been playing fantastic. I mean, he absolutely outran Darnold. I mean, Darnold is slow as
Well, John,
molasses.
I said it. I said it the 2 weeks ago show. Will McDonald, and he's definitely having a good season. I'm not criticizing, but again, unblocked on that sack. He is getting I've never seen the luck that a guy can get when it comes to getting sacks. He's fallen into a few of them. Now he still has to obviously go after the quarterback and make the tackle. So I'm commending him, but it is pretty funny. And he is up to, yeah, he's got those numbers, bringing back to the Jets' incompetence as an organization. Because when you see McDonald playing this well, and even Michael Clemens showing some life from the pass rush, Hassan Reddick is still not there. He obviously can help this team win games. This is absolutely incredible that the Jets are playing shorthanded and they're not good enough. What are they going to do if they go 8-9 this year and then Reddick doesn't play a game and they're like a game out of making the playoffs? Because let's face it, John, with the parity and 7 playoff teams, they're going to have probably a 9-8 team get in the
Yeah,
playoffs.
yeah, yeah. And Allen again just shows what a bulldog he is.
Right, but so
The way,
what?
the way, I mean,
Right,
the way
but
they use him, I'm surprised that they don't use him more in with the short yardage. That was what my surprise was in the Minnesota game, is
right.
they had some short yardage opportunities and they didn't use him.
Well, they lost the game on the 1st and goal from the 1. They didn't use him on
Right.
the first 2 downs. Hall got stopped twice. The prior
Yep.
games, Hall was able to score from the 1, but he shouldn't have gotten 2 chances. Allen should have had at least one of those chances. The other thing to point out is that they're running what they call the pistol sometimes, where the running back is like 7 yards
Yeah.
deep, where the
Yeah.
quarterback lines up in front of the running back on short yardage. He's so far away from the line of scrimmage. The time he gets the ball, if there's any penetration, and like you said, the O line's not doing the job, they had him dead in his tracks on that 4th down. And
Yeah.
even like they should have kicked the field goal, obviously, but then you cannot get stopped in that situation. So it's just 2 weeks of just bad football. Team, just you just look at them and it's like they look really good in spurts and they look really bad in spurts. And that's obviously in the NFL. It's not going to get it done.
And we're gonna have to watch them against Buffalo this coming week. So
Well, we'll get to the Bills later. Thank you very much. With that insanity, we'll go around the league. I don't want to spend because there's so much to talk about. The Jets just don't deserve the airtime. They
I
really
agree.
don't. Now,
I agree.
folks, we're going to talk about this one last subject, and then we'll move on. So only the Jets now, led by Captain Chaos Woody Johnson. Oh, I need another shiny toy trade talk. So Devonte Adams, we are talking, it's around 7:30 Eastern on Monday, dropping Tuesday, and we do appreciate everybody watching the show on YouTube.com. Bouk and Zoobie, search it, BOUK, and Zoobie, ZOOBIE. Got to search that. Please subscribe, like the episodes. It drives the algo. Also available on Spotify.com. Same thing. Like the episode, subscribe. And our friends at the world famous LIR.com, 927 LIR.com, where they are playing music from the 80s. And please check it out. Internet radio, limited interruptions. I'm sure everybody will enjoy the show. So as always, we want to put that plug out there because, John, we're a word of mouth show. And that's we really appreciate people listening in and, tell your friends.
And we love getting feedback. Thanks to the guys in North Carolina for the feedback.
Yeah, right. So quickly before we get back to what we were talking about, Outer Banks is where I ended up going. We had a high school reunion, amazingly. It's good to see. We had a great group of guys, still friends to this day. We all turned 60 this year. Everybody's
Yeah.
a couple stragglers still, John, who have not turned 60. We had a great time. We watched a lot of baseball. We watched that disastrous Denver game. So I did want to, give a little shout out to the crew. And I will say, John, these guys are a pretty amazing group, and the ability for them to eat and drink at a high level was quite amazing to see. And as always, John, I need a vacation from the vacation.
Uh, that's all, that's all I was thinking about when you guys are down there. I'm like, how much drinking and eating, but the best thing about our crew is how we make fun of each other, that's the best part.
Yeah, there was definitely a little bit going on about that. So, yeah, where was I, John? I was going to make this big thing and I lost my train of thought. What was I talking about again?
But Adams.
Devontae Adams. That's what happened. I just the that whole subject is just driving me crazy. So thank you for getting me focused again. So this is a problem for the Jets. That this is a Aaron Rodgers, please get me Devontae Adams. Do I really need him? Is he a game changer? Will he be welcome in a clubhouse? John, I have a feeling, like I said with Captain Chaos, that the Jets are going to be in on this heavy, which has obviously been reported. So you want to, what is your view on this potential move?
I you know, I mean, I think it could help us, but at the same time, from what I'm hearing, that they want a fourth and a sixth for him for what, half a year of
Right. Is that what,
Devontae? Yeah,
well,
they're asking for a fourth and a sixth for him.
Well, I think a few weeks ago they were talking about second round pick, which of course everybody kind of chuckled at that. I think the Jets, they're going to give up that third round pick that they acquired in the draft. I have a feeling the Jets are going to step up and actually overpay and
Like they
really
always
just
do.
right
Like
and
they
really
always
roll
do.
the dice. Now, I was in favor of him coming in the off season if they could get him at a reasonable trade if he was in camp and they're getting on the same page, but they chose to sign Mike Williams, it would probably be Lazard's snaps, the one that he would lose the snaps, which I don't think is that big of a deal.
Good riddance.
John, if you're talking a fourth and a sixth rounder for a franchise that is basically supposedly all in a mediocre NFL, I mean, I don't know how anybody can argue that trade, and people will, but a four and a six. Now, you're talking a third round pick. That's when you're going to get some barking. So I'll sit here and say I'll trade a four and a six for Devontae Adams. I'll do it because that's how desperate they are.
I think he would help them. I definitely think he would help them.
Right,
And
and it's hard. Right, and what they're giving up is not going to hurt them
right,
right
right,
now because they're all in anyway, folks. They're all in.
right, right. And Devontae Adams is an excellent player, and he's certainly better than a Mike Williams. He's certainly better than Lazard, who just has way too many passes thrown towards him, and misses about 30% of them. So I'm telling you, stone hands, Paul. It has not changed with that guy. It has
It's
not
unfortunate.
changed.
It's unfortunate. He had a chance there to make a great catch. It would have been, I don't say great catch, a really good catch on a back shoulder, like really to the side there. He had hit his hands. Great players make those plays. So I think that's it. On the Jets, we've talked about them way too much.
Way too much.
Around the league or the blue team,
Giants.
John. The blue team,
Giants.
which I have to tell you, I did not get to see a lot of this game. They had this crazy play in the beginning of the game where they fumbled on their own goal line, and it was ran back, right, 101 yards by Seattle. But the Giants persevered. And, it's so funny, John, because there was so much going on with the Mets and the Giants. I was trying to figure it out. So let me see what the Giants are doing at the end of the game. I really hardly watched. And I turn it on, and they're up by 10 with like a little over, yeah, it's like a little under 5 minutes to go. Seattle's like on their own 5 yard line. And I'm thinking, well, the Giants have this game. So I think I went back to the Mets. So Seattle, did you see any of this? They drove all the way
No,
down the field. You didn't see
I
it because you're
took
watching the Mets.
you and I did the same thing. I
Right.
actually saw the score and I said, "Oh, this game's over. Let's
Right.
go
So they
back."
somehow they drove the field, got the ball back, had a chance to win it or tie it, I should say, with the field goal, and a tremendous play, and it was a block kick where they leaped. What was his name? Isaiah. What's his? I can't think of his last name. Who was a top college player that they, was a kind of a bust with the Cardinals. Made an unbelievable athletic play and blocked the kick. The Giants run it back, and the Giants are in the muck at 2-3
It's
in
true.
the NFC, where if we could, because it's not fair for us to talk about the Giants, John, because if we're not watching the games, I don't think the Giant fans want to hear us not know what's going on. So
Right,
we
right.
commend them. We give them a kudos for the win. And the funny thing is, John, when you look at that division, and this is, you hopefully you probably were thinking, oh, Paul's going to bring this up. Hopefully he forgets because
You didn't
John made a
forget.
comment when we were
I knew
talking
you
about
were
the
gonna
worst teams in the NFL, and he mentioned the Washington Commanders,
do
who
it. I
since
knew you were
that
gonna bring it up.
moment have literally looked like the Super Bowl favorites led by Jaden Daniels. Now, this is a franchise, folks, that was one of the great franchises in the NFL as the Redskins, where you could not get a ticket in DC. Because I know I went to college in that area. They were the hottest ticket in the 80s, the Hogs, the whole thing, John. And then Daniel Snyder single handedly basically destroys the franchise where they couldn't even put anybody in the upper deck. They were putting like banners up there to block seats. And he took them to the depths of the NFL. They got new ownership in there. And now they have turned it around, John. I'm sure they're the hottest ticket down there now because DC especially. They're
Yeah.
definitely front runners and they'll be jumping back on that bandwagon. But yeah, kudos to them. And it's tough when you come out with something like that, John. That was pretty funny. You're
I knew you
motivated.
were bringing it up. I knew you were gonna bring that one up. I was like, oh my God, they're 4-1 now.
And I don't feel because I remember saying, "Oh yeah, well, they won a game." So that's what happens when you make predictions right after 2 weeks. Now after 5 weeks, I've said that how many times in the show already about the parity. So the Vikings are undefeated. The Chiefs are undefeated. They've got a game tonight, right, against the Chargers, right? So can they stay undefeated? They've been decimated with injuries. We know the Vikings are not a top team. The
No, they're
Jets
not.
just played them when we saw them. So losing Aaron Jones in that game, I should mention that was a big loss for them. So that helped the Jets out too. So Sam Darnold came back to earth. But hey, John, they're 5-0. You look at that division with the Lions, right, and the Bears. That whole division is very strong, and Green Bay with
Yeah,
the Vikings,
yeah,
because the Vikings, I think most people had them last in that division.
that's right.
So that is definitely the best division in the NFC. And there's been some crazy disappointments. The Rams and the 49ers, right? 1-4 and 2-3 respectively.
Yeah,
They are
unbelievable.
injuries affecting both of them. Just shows, John, injuries, right? That kills you. No Cup, no Nakua for the Rams, still no McCaffrey for the Niners. So they dropped. Their kicker got hurt right in the game, so
Yep. Yep.
they're in trouble. It is so wide open, John. So I guess is there two? I think there's two games. Are there two games tonight? Because I'm thinking, like, are the Eagles and the Lions playing, or did they get buys? I should check that. So I will check that.
Yeah. Well, one other thing while you're checking it, since we're talking about the NFC, um, I don't know if you saw it while you were down there, but when Brett Favre was testifying before Congress, he also announced that he has Parkinson's. So I feel bad when I heard that. I said, Brett was a great quarterback. I feel sorry that he has to go through this.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
sad.
of course, it doesn't help when you're getting hit by 250-pound guys all the time, 300-pound guys. If you don't think that that's going to affect you, it does. I mean, all these guys with the CTE too, where they're passing away from it, it affects you. I mean, it's a tough game. It's a really, really tough game. And people, I really can't stand people when they say, oh, why is this guy retiring at 28 years old? I felt like saying, because he's smart. That's why he's retiring. He doesn't want to be crippled for the rest of his life, walk
Yeah.
with canes or have hip replacements. I mean, I don't blame these guys. Get a couple of years in, make a couple of million, and walk away with your health.
Well, it's sad to hear with that. Yeah, there's only one game. It's the Saints Chiefs tonight. I don't know where I'm getting my Chargers from. Sorry about that, folks. That's what happens when you come back from vacation and do a show. I guess there's buys are now in the schedule, John. I forgot the NFL buys, so I believe the Eagles and the Lions are actually probably off. So sorry about that. That is the NFC story. I guess the big game, a crazy game, was the Bengals and the Ravens,
Oh,
where
wow. Yeah, that was a
another
crazy
of
game.
one of these where the Jets did it against Denver, relying on a 50-yard field goal to win a game is, especially in bad conditions, where Lamar Jackson, I don't know if you saw the end of this game, John, he gets hit in the overtime, and the ball comes flying out. The Bengals pick it up, and they're already in field goal range. They don't do much to move it forward, end up taking an attempt for a long field goal. And incredibly, it wasn't the snap, it was the hold, where the holder bobbles the ball. The kicker shanked it, and that was it. And the Ravens went down the field, and Justin Tucker won it after tying it to put it into overtime with like a 50-something yard field goal for Tucker, who was the best kicker in the NFL, and then has suddenly started missing his 50-yarders. Because if you can't hit 50 yards, like the Vikings kid, he's a young kid, Rick Ruckert, his name is, he hit a bunch of 50-yarders. That
Yes, he
guy in
did.
Dallas, the guy has range out to like 65. The NFL is. I think it's time to narrow the goalpost, John. I think it's time. The kicking game is overtaking the NFL, where and then also, of course, the Texan game, and we jump to that game, won at the end with a long
Yeah,
field goal.
yeah.
So there's just I don't know. What do you think about the kicking? Do you think I'm nuts?
No,
Is it
no, I
time to
think
narrow the
no.
goalpost?
Actually, no. I actually think it's really exciting that these guys are making these long field goals. I mean, when you see a guy lining up for a 60 or 62, and you're like, wow, this is some kick, and then they make it, and sometimes with even more. I mean, it could have gone another 5 yards. So no, I'm totally for the kicking game. I
You
mean,
are.
if these guys can kick 55, I mean, just think about it. 55, 60 yards, you're kicking a field goal. I mean, that's an incredible thing to do. It's not easy. If it
Right.
was
So
if,
did you?
if it was
Yeah.
if it was a Zubulake method, we wouldn't have any field goals.
All right. Well, I'm trying to get more excitement in the game. I don't want to see it being a kicking contest. Actually, I really don't. I want to see more kick returns. You know my feeling about the
Uh,
dynamic or the un in dynamic kickoff.
it looks
Um,
ridiculous when you watch these kickoffs. And and I'm wondering what these people in England are thinking. It's like, why aren't these guys moving? I mean, it looks so stupid. When you watch it, everyone's like frozen, and like I said, these fans in Europe are saying, "What are they doing? What are they waiting for?" I don't know. I don't like the new kickoff rules. We both agree on that.
So did you see the end of Buffalo Houston? So we just
I did
mentioned the long
not.
field goal to
I did
win. So you have
that.
I
I
don't know
did.
if you heard about the controversy with the what the Bills did.
No, I did
So
not.
all right, well it might take a little time to explain it. So basically it was a tie game that would have gone into overtime. So the Texans punted. The Bills had it like on their own 3 yard line, and I don't remember exactly how many seconds to go. I think it was in the 40s, and they had no timeouts, the Bills, with the ball, and the Texans had 3 timeouts. So they were literally like on the three. So this is one of these situations where everybody's killing the Bills. I still kill the Bills, but there was a little bit of a reason why they did what they did. They tried to throw the ball, John, not once, not twice. They threw the ball 3 times to try to get some yardage to get I don't in their minds try to move the ball enough where they maybe could have gotten into field goal range. Highly unlikely. So instead of just running the ball and trying to give the punter more room and forcing the Texans to take all their timeouts, they decided to throw. The Titans took none of their timeouts. The Buffalo punter has to basically, because they gained no yardage, was right up on the end zone line at the end, right? And then
Oh,
has a crummy punt where the Texans base catch it and pretty much line it up. They couldn't move it, but because of Fairbairn, their kicker is so good, he nails a 59-yarder. Game over. The Bills are
wow,
3-2.
wow,
So lots of
wow.
controversy with Sean McDermott. I give him a slight pass because they were definitely going to call timeouts. They the Houston would have been able to get the ball back if they stopped them. That's a big if because you could argue Buffalo could have ran 3 plays and then got even a first down, and obviously it would have went to overtime. We'll never know. Josh Allen was 9 for 30 in the game.
Ooh, ooh,
Took a big
wow.
hit where his head hit the ground and it bounced. And incredibly, the NFL's neutral observer lets him back on the field after that hit. And John, now he looked good, but what happened was when his head hit the first time, he basically crumpled to the second hit. So it's one of the like where it bounced and he didn't bounce up. He actually kind of almost looked like it knocked him out for a second. And then
Oh,
he got
wow.
up and he was fine. He goes in the tent for a minute and he comes running out. So where is the ability for them to keep these guys off the field? And you're just talking about the thing with Favre. So Josh Allen is, yeah, again, he's a great player. He had a terrible game. They were missing Shakur, their new top receiver. He was out for the game. So the Bills are now looking that they are just like any other team. So there is
Wow.
definitely some wild games, John, and it's so hard to keep track of everything because, and then on top of what happens last night, Pittsburgh and Dallas have a rain. I guess it was a huge storm. They used to play football in all conditions. Was there lightning? I guess there was. There better have been. I don't know what the heck the story was. And the game, what God knows what time it ended with the Cowboys winning a big game.
Yeah. Well, clearly there had to be lightning because that's the only time that they'll stop a NFL game.
Yeah, I was. It's so funny, John. When that 9:30 game and you're watching it, it's impossible to make it. I watched the 1 o'clock games, all the endings on the red zone, like, and then the Mets were on. By that night game, there's just nothing left in the tank. I was done. Just yeah, right. That was it.
hey,
So,
hey,
do you have
listen.
anything else around the league?
Well, no, no. The only thing I want to tell you is if there's a if there's something that you want to stay up for, and it's actually at 9 o'clock. If you have HBO, there's a show called The Penguin, and
Okay.
it's actually very, very good. It's very good.
It's
It,
okay. What is
it's obviously it's the Penguin from Batman and
okay?
how he started. It's like a mini series. They're gonna have 6 episodes. It's actually they have Colin Farrell playing the Penguin, and you
Okay.
don't even recognize him. You
Hey,
don't even recognize the guy.
there's a little promo for HBO who is not advertising on the Bouk and Zoobie show. So there you go. I did see Saving Sackett or Signing Sackett or Sackett,
Oh,
Joe Sackett. I did watch.
okay, you did.
I did. I did watch it, and it actually was really good. It brought
I
back
told
some
you it was good.
memories.
Yeah,
There you
I
go. That
told
was
you.
a little ESPN little movie. So for all those sports nerds out there, Ranger fans. So yeah, it's a good segue to the winter sports. Hockey starting tomorrow night, believe it or not. No, we're not
Unbelievable.
going to have an NHL preview because the season's so long. So the long road to the Stanley Cup incredibly begins tomorrow. The Devils already won a couple of games in Europe, which I don't think anybody in the tri-state knows about,
I
but
don't
I'm
even
just
know
going to
that they did.
yeah, they played in Prague, I believe, and won 2 games. Good for the Devils. Long season. Islanders, Rangers. We'll get to them, but the other team in town decides to make a massive trade. So we're going to put you right on the spot. I will give you my thoughts on this. Give us the details of the big Nick trade, and obviously I already played a preseason game. What is your overall feeling for the Carl Anthony Towns era?
Well, the deal was that they sent Julius Randle, DiVincenzo, a first rounder. Then they had to include the Hornets because they needed to balance out their salary cap. They needed to get under the salary cap. So they ended up giving up Brown, Jeffries, and Washington and 2 second-round picks to the Hornets. And we get Carl Anthony Towns and then some kid that I really don't know. Uh, he's from Africa, Naji. He was a 2023 first round pick by Charlotte. He's like a center type, but he's playing in Europe. They're stashing him over there. But that's basically we got. That's what we got. We had to give up for Carl Anthony Towns.
All
Now,
right. Okay.
people have to ask themselves: were the Knicks stronger with having Hartenstein, DiVincenzo, and Randall, or are they stronger with Towns, Bridges, and Anunoby? That's the way you really have to look at this. I think the Knicks are stronger now. Um, I'm not a huge fan of Towns. I know Mr. Gamal Smith has been, even during the first draft, when it was between Porzingis and Towns, he was begging the Knicks to take Towns at the time. Knicks ended up taking Porzingis, which, no one knew who Porzingis was. Now we know he's an excellent player, but he's not a tough guy, and he's more of like a finesse type of center. He can shoot, yeah, he could rebound, but he's not a great defender. We know that, and he's not really a tough guy. If they're going to pair him up with Robinson somehow, then Robinson can cover for him. But uh, I'm withholding my judgment for now.
All right.
Uh, I think they're better, but they're not tougher. They lost some toughness in this trade. They lost some toughness because
They lost.
you know
They
for,
lost.
for
Yeah, they lost grit. They definitely lost grit.
yeah yeah
DiVincenzo, they're gonna lose. They're gonna miss him. They're gonna miss him a lot. I think this was like almost like a little desperation move because of losing Hartenstein and Robinson being hurt. He's a perimeter big man who
right.
can pout. Now, he's from New Jersey, John. So he played at St. Joe's and Metuchen. He should understand this market. And he has some little off the court. He's made some comments about some social issues that not really factual, if you know what I'm saying, John. I don't know if you heard one of them, and he's got to be careful because people are not going to care about that stuff. And I'm a little concerned about exactly what you warned about is the toughness and the ability to handle adversity. In Minnesota, you can get away with that. Minnesotians are very nice people. And New York, the tri-state, John, it's a different story.
And you know what was really weird about this trade is I think it was like 2 days before they had Thibodeau, they had all these basketball players celebrating the groundbreaking of Earl Monroe's charter school of basketball, and they named the court after Julius Randle because he donated $1 million. He was at
Wow.
the ceremony. He says, "I love being in New York," blah blah blah, and 2 days later he's gone. He was right in the middle of the Bronx. So again, as much as Knick fans want to complain about Julius Randle, he played very well for us. He was tough. Did he make some crazy shots? Shot selections, yes. But Mikal Bridges is an excellent player.
Yeah.
He's actually a very good defensive player. So I mean, between him and DiVincenzo, I mean, Bridges is much better than DiVincenzo is.
Right.
It, like I said, I'm a little.
All right. You're torn.
I'm almost
Okay.
feeling a little Charles Smith here with Towns
All
when
right.
it comes to toughness. So
Okay, we'll see, John. We'll see how it plays out. That's what it's all about. It's a results business. So good for Leon Rhodes is done for the most part. He's done well, so he does get a pass in my book. I'll trust him on this. I don't necessarily love this deal. I'm definitely concerned with this, the desperation for a big man. But yeah, his numbers for rebounding is a little over 8 a game.
yeah,
He should probably be closer to 10.
yeah.
So what does that mean? We'll find out. Like you said, we'll see. We reserve judgment on the deal. I would probably agree with you. It's probably 60-40 for me against it, but that's not a big deal. And the
No, I
thing is
think
with
they're better.
Bridges,
I think they're better. They're
right?
better.
They're better, but Bridges cost them draft picks, right? So we don't know the long term on that. That's a long term versus short term. They named Jalen Brunson team captain. They had like this big deal about it. I'm like, okay, whatever. I guess it's a big deal. As I guess hasn't been a captain for a long time. I don't know why professional teams wouldn't want to say who's captain. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Who's the last Nick captain? Am I missing something? Like it's been since Walt Frazier, or is it what was the
No, no,
yeah
isn't it? Wasn't it Patrick Ewing?
yeah I would assume so. That's what I'm saying. They kind of like had this ceremony for being named captain. I was like, it's a little over the top, but whatever.
Yeah,
He's a good guy. We love
I don't think
Brunson.
they ever. Yeah, I don't think they ever made Carmelo Anthony a
Oh
captain.
no, I wasn't insinuating that. Well, maybe Spreewell might have been captain. All right, enough of them. Enough of the Knicks. Good for the Knicks. We'll talk about them much more in detail. But
couple other.
we
I actually
yes.
had a couple other things really quick in the
All right, you
NBA.
got to be quick. Yes.
Derrick Rose has retired
All right.
finally.
Okay.
Uh, Great player. One other player we need to mention is Dikembe Mutombo passed away.
Yeah, I did see that. It's very sad. Yeah,
Yeah,
didn't know he
very
was sick.
sad. Very young,
Yeah, it's
58 years
58.
old, unfortunately, from brain cancer. One of the best defenders you will see, one of the best rebounders you will see. And I always loved that finger wave whenever he rejected someone. I used to love when he used to do it, except when it was against the Knicks.
Right.
Then you felt like, you know, throwing it right back at him.
Well,
And
it's
but
okay.
great player. He was a great player.
All
I
right.
enjoyed watching him. Two last things. Uh, so Jenkins and Soriano from St. John's have signed with NBA teams. So
Okay. All right.
Jenkins actually signed with the Pistons. So he has a pretty good chance of making that team.
All
Jenkins.
right.
I mean, the Pistons are awful. And Soriano went to the Hornets. So again, he has a chance to make the team, these guys. I mean, two awful teams.
I think they'll both be in the G League. I don't think they're making a roster, but there's 15 guys on a roster, so you can
Yeah,
make a
yeah.
15-man roster. We'll definitely keep an eye on that, John. We'll definitely keep an eye on that. But we got to get to some more important things because not only have we not seen or spoken to everybody in a couple of weeks, we talked about the New York Mets and would they still be playing the next time we're on the air? So it's time, folks, for baseball with Boot.
Yeah, it's been an amazing week, week and a half. I'm glad the Mets are coming back home. So they actually
Yeah,
have they actually have two games. Actually, I will be attending those games. I was
really? They're
able,
letting you back in? That's good to hear.
yeah, they let me back in. Uh, you let me know when you want to go because I still have access to games.
Okay.
So
Well,
so
we'll see if they advance,
you
I
let me
guess.
know.
I don't
I
know.
knew you wouldn't be up for this series because it's too early, but the way the Mets played these past week and a half, you have to commend them. I mean, they ended up with 89 wins,
Yes,
as you
fantastic.
and I expected. Uh, I expected when we realized that they had a real definite possibility of getting in. Like I said, I was skeptical, but they ended up with 89 wins. The Braves ended up with 89 wins, but it was how they were able to get those 89 wins, particularly that clutch home run by Lindor when you thought the Mets were down and out, and they say, "Oh man, now we have to win the second game of a doubleheader in Atlanta," and he hits the two-run homer to put him ahead. Uh, and then, of course, the Mets laid down the second game, and the it's not a very good playoff system. I mean, the way they set it up, because by the Mets losing the second game, they didn't have to play San Diego.
Yeah, they made it easy.
And
Yeah.
and we wanted to, and we definitely wanted to play the Brewers. I mean, the San Diego's got is a tough team. So that was miracle number one. Miracle number two, the Mets obviously blew the second game to the Brewers. They really should have beaten them two straight. But listen, we went to the third game. I don't know about you guys down in North Carolina, but I'm saying to myself, Pete, come on, Pete. You do, Pete. I mean, I even texted you earlier. When was the last time that Pete hit a home run or drove in a run? And Pete Alonso in that ninth inning going against their best closer. And I have to say, Murphy, the manager of the Brewers, set everything up perfectly for them to win. And Mets miracle, three-run homer, Pete comes through. And again, the, uh, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, they've been amazing this year, and they're fun to watch. But
Yeah, no,
just
it
so many
was
heart attack games, a
no,
lot
it's
of heart attack
crazy.
games.
So I was watching with the group, and there were some Met fans there. We were too busy complaining about why in the world did we take Quintana out of that game? Please let him pitch another inning because the dreaded bullpen that the
Ugh.
Mets are utilizing way too much. Where someone in the house, John, will I will not name him, had a crazy 14 parlay betting streak of losses.
Oh,
Every game down there, he was betting that Pete Alonso would hit a home run as part of his parlay. And then it came. Incredibly, he had it still on for the fifth day, and on the fifth day, it hit big because he needed a few different things to happen, namely the Mets win that game and Pete Alonso hit a home run. And incredibly, you saw it happen. So I didn't tell you that story. So that was incredibly, I mean, it was just really hysterical because I honestly thought, John, going into that last inning in that Met game, was that it was going to set up when Lindor got on that Alonso would be up with the whole season on the line because he actually was only one out, not two. And
That's right.
because Nimmo got that hit and he got ahead of the account, that was the biggest thing. It was right, a 3-1 pitch, right? I believe.
Yes, it was.
And it just kept, the minute he hit it, you definitely, it was definitely not a no doubter because those opposite field home runs, it's so hard to tell. Now, in Philadelphia, anything hit, it's just like Yankee Stadium, right? Anything hit to the right field can fly out of that place.
That's right.
But that was just absolutely incredible how that ball just continued to carry. And Peterson coming in after the Quintana situation where we're so upset because Budo came in there and just, oh my, John, I don't know if they can trust him. I know
No,
he
Maton. No, it was Maton.
oh no, was it Maton? No, what game am
Maton. Maton gave up the 2 consecutive home runs.
I thought Budo did that. I thought Budo gave up the 2 games. Is that the Atlanta game? What game did Budo give up the home runs? I'm
No,
sorry. We're gonna
no,
have to
no, no, no. It was Maton that they brought in that gave up the consecutive home runs
in
to
that
Milwaukee.
in the Milwaukee game.
Yeah, yeah.
Why do I think
Maton.
it was Buto? When did Buto
Not
crap the bed,
Budo.
as we said?
Budo has not been pitching well at
No,
all.
John, he gave up 2 home runs in
Are
a
you?
row. What game was
No,
that? Was
no,
that
no.
in the
What
Atlanta?
was it? The Atlanta game or was it
I don't
the
know. Uh-oh.
Brewer game? I thought it was the Brewer game that Maton gave up the 2 home runs.
We're gonna have to check this. I thought
Oh, we're gonna have to check it right now
so.
because
I
I'll
thought
keep.
Quintana went to Budo in that game, and then I know Maton also gave up some big hits. So go to the videotape, John, because this is
Maton is. They're using him way too much.
well. I think
Way too
as you're
much.
looking this up, folks, and John, the Mets bullpen, in my opinion, will be the demise of the team. That
Yeah,
they
no.
just don't have enough guys. If you compare them to the other teams that are rolling guys out, and it is amazing, like you said, in that Milwaukee situation where I thought, I know what the kid's on an innings limit, right?
Okay, I'm half wrong. Maton did give up 2 home runs,
Right.
but it was in game 2.
All right,
It
you're
was in
wrong.
game.
You're not half wrong. So
Well,
Budo gave up the 2 home runs in that game against
yeah,
Atlanta,
yes,
right? When Pete
yes.
hit the home run, right? Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, that's the
Against
Milwaukee. Because
right.
obviously the Philly games
Uh,
have been a Mets miracle in game 1, and then the Phillies came back in game 2. So this is what's happened, folks. There's been so many of these heart attack games. Us two old guys, we can't keep track. So Budo came into the Milwaukee game and gave up the 2 home runs. Correct?
I'm looking it up. Thought
I thought you just said that was the case. Anyway,
but
yeah. So what? Okay, so folks, it's one game apiece.
one game
Who is?
apiece.
So we've got game
Manaya's
3.
pitching tomorrow.
Right. So Manaya, I think what game he didn't pitch enough innings. That I think that was against the Braves, where he pulled them early in that game. John, Diaz's arm is going to fall off. They have to get something from somebody. They cannot do they got 2 innings out of Reed Garrett. That was amazing that happened. So they have to do something.
I was afraid he was going to blow it. But
right now, that was earlier in the game. It was a low pressure situation, and then in last night's game, they try to use Budo, and he didn't. He ended up pulling him quick. So for Diaz to come in so early, and then they get McGill has to pitch the end, and that's this not a great situation. Their depth in their bullpen, they could kill him. They need Manaya to go out there, John. He's got to throw 7 innings. He has to, hopefully 8. Severino's been great, John, but he gets to that 6th or 7th inning, right? And he just conks out.
But what they did not mention during this game, and I don't know if were you watching that game yesterday?
Yeah, I actually missed the first 3 innings. So
okay, so Severino early in that inning when he covered first, he stepped on the bag and he did this little step to get out of the way. He hurt himself. He hurt his ankle. I saw it. He was grimacing. And I'm saying to myself, and I was saying it to my wife, I said, I hope he didn't hurt his ankle. And she goes, oh, you're always worrying about whether the players are getting hurt. I said, that's his foot that he has to plant when he's throwing. It was his right foot that he hurt. And what happened? He gives up a single to Turner. Then, he gives up the home run to Harper, which again was a meatball. And he lost his concentration because the next pitch, Castellanos was doing squat. He was actually getting booed. The whole entire team was getting booed by the Philly fans. The Mets had them on the ropes.
Yeah, they
I
did.
mean, they could have, if they would have won that game, they could have swept them. I mean, they could have put them out of their misery. Now, it's a series now. Before it was not a series. And, Severino pitched tough in that game. He was pitching a great game. He just, no one's saying anything about it. I think he hurt himself when he missed, he stepped on first base and then I don't know, he took a couple extra steps to get out of the runner's way and he winced. And I don't think he was feeling right after that. And it
Well,
showed.
yeah, maybe. I know what you're talking about, but yeah. So Budo came in for 2/3, gave up a hit. Then he's bringing in Diaz in early, and Diaz didn't. He didn't do the job, obviously. So um, we should point out offensively, Vientos has been unbelievable.
Oh,
Absolutely
yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
God, it's really unbelievable. Him and Lindor carrying them, right? So. Oh boy. Anyway, so yeah, and they did finally get Taylor out of there for a game, and Bader did take an over.
Yeah.
But that's the Mets bottom of the order is definitely hurting them a little bit. But they just need a huge effort from Manaea. Coming home, they can obviously not go back to Philly. They got to win those next two, John. I don't know if they can win game 5, but the thing is with this team, it's impossible to say they can't do anything, right?
I
Because
know.
they have shown that it doesn't matter and they will be alive until the last out of the ninth inning. So that's great. It's been a great year already for them, no matter what. Where they
No
head in
matter
the
what.
future is another story, but they've had a tremendous year and kudos to everybody. And I'm just calling it. It's like Mendoza magic, John. How many times I'm like against what he's doing? I know you've criticized him here and there, but he always comes up smelling like a rose.
Yeah. And they've been a fun team to watch. And like you said, even if they lose this series, the Phillies are a very good team. I mean, they have a stacked lineup. They have decent starting pitching. They have actually what was supposed to be very good relief, but the Mets are beating up on their relief pitchers.
Yeah, they are.
Why they haven't brought in Alvarado at all in this series? I'm like, what happened to him? They're, is he out of favor now?
He
I mean, they
must
used
be
to
because
always bring him in. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
I'm not following the Phillies, but he's a hard thrower. I think he's very wild though, right? So anyway, all right. So great job by the Mets. We're very happy on the Bouk and Zoobie show to continue to be talking about the Mets. We'll be on next week. We'll still be dropping the shows on Tuesday morning, as mentioned earlier. Thanks again, everybody. Please subscribe, like the episodes. So let's get over to the Yankees, John, before we
yeah.
close it out. Unless you have something else in the Mets, I'll always give that option for you.
No, nothing else with the Mets. The only thing that we really should mention before we talk about the Yankees is Pete Rose. They
Oh,
passed
that's
away.
true. Pete Rose passed away. He
Pete
did pass away.
Rose, and for most Met fans, older Met fans, they still haven't forgiven Pete Rose for beating up on Buddy Harrelson in the 1973 playoffs, which was a total mismatch. I mean, Pete Rose took him down like he was a wrestler. But the funny thing is nothing really happened to Pete Rose or Buddy Harrelson. But during that entire brawl, I mean, Mets were going at it with the Reds, fights left and right. I mean, now these guys would just stay in the dugout and say, "Listen, I'm not going to hurt myself with the type of contract I have." But outside of that, Pete Rose was a tremendous player.
Yes.
outside of his personal problems with gambling, which is really ironic because now betting is all over every sport and particularly baseball. You can't even watch a game without the odds being in the corner and even promos in the middle of the game. If you bet $100 on the Mets, you'll get 120. It's like, so I really feel that if Pete Rose would have admitted right from the beginning that he bet on baseball, maybe there would have been some forgiveness and he would have put him in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah,
Uh,
I agree. And it's
uh,
funny. I think we talked about him a few weeks ago, right? Because I
yes,
mentioned
we
I had been
did.
watching the documentary about him,
Yes.
and I think it didn't really go into his health issues, so it could have been sudden. He, signed thousands and thousands of baseballs to make a living. That's what he did. Memorabilia guy. You're right, John. He should have admitted a long time ago. Baseball probably should have still let him in. They could just tell his story. So what's wrong with him as a player? He was a Hall of Famer. And as a manager, he did something that was against the rules and pointed out. And so make him ineligible. So now it would be ridiculous to put him in. That he's passed. That's not going to help anything. Maybe it will help his son, Pete Jr. So yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you did mention that, John, because it's always important for us to remember the old time greats, and he's definitely one of them.
Well, if you think about how many hits he had, if anyone were to try that now, that means in order even to tie him or even be close to tie him, they would have to get 200 hits every year for 21 straight years.
Yeah,
That's
that's not happening.
almost impossible. It's impossible.
Yeah,
It's
they
impossible.
don't
How can
play
you do
enough too.
something like that? Right.
Yeah,
Right.
there's not many guys who play 162. He always did. Actually, kudos to Pete Alonso for playing 162 games this
Yeah,
year.
that's
I
right.
believe there was four guys. I think it was Osuna and Olson from the Braves, and there was somebody else. That's not an easy feat, so we definitely should point that out. Playing 162 games, so and Pete gets that home run. He may be in the Brewers uniform or the Cubs uniform next year. Only time will tell. Yeah, so let's get to the Yankees, who are actually playing as we speak. It's early. It's no score. Rodon is pitching tonight. You had
Yankees are
already
going
been.
to
You're
the
on the
World
record.
Series.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
saying you're. That's it.
It's
Nobody
not
can
that.
beat them.
No, look at what the competition is. You have the Royals, nice young team, not the Yankees. Then on the other side, you have the Tigers and the Guardians. Now, as I'm very happy that the Tigers won today, uh, but the Tigers are no match for the Yankees, and neither are the Guardians. The Yankees really should be in the World Series, but whoever's coming out of the National League, whether it's the Phillies or the Padres, and even the Dodgers, even though the Dodgers have their entire pitching staff is just decimated. Uh, they're much tougher in the National League. If you look at the playoff series, these are tough teams. There's no pushover in any of the four. I mean, even the Mets could beat the Yankees, and they did prove that they beat them during the year. So Yankees will have an easy ride to the World Series, but you're going to be interested in knowing what player was kept off of the playoff roster that you and I dislike?
For who? The Yankees?
Yes. Who's
I
one
don't.
player that Marcus Stroman
Oh, yeah,
off?
Stroman. He didn't make the
He
roster.
didn't
Okay.
make the playoff. Yeah, he's not on a playoff roster.
Well, they can bring him back for the next round. That's how it works, right? They can kind of
Next round. But
mix and match it. But if he's not going to pitch, what do they need? A starting pitcher? Yeah, not one of our favorites, but don't really have that negative a thought of him. So yeah, the Yankees are no score. The Padres did win, so it's 1-1 in that series. Mets, Phillies 1-1. So maybe we'll get some fifth games, and
yeah,
we will talk about that next week. And I guess, John, we may be on to, I shouldn't say we were talking about doing a Monday show, but it looks like I guess the Jets are playing Monday night. So we will be doing the
Tuesday.
show on Tuesday and dropping the show on Wednesday. So again, thanks for everybody for listening. So John, who do you got to thank?
As always, thank you to our producer Zach Zubulake and to our loyal listeners. Keep the feedback coming. Also, thanks to our community partners Ronald McDonald House, Kids in Seats, and the Jackie Robinson Foundation. See you next week.